Well, welcome to the Unstoppable Freedom Podcast. I'm Jimmy Page. Today's podcast is part 2. And again, we're going to have some more fun because our guest is the owner of the tactical game. We're going to talk about two topics that we're super passionate about here, fitness and firearms. We're passionate about those things because we want you to be capable and confident. We want you to be ready. We want you to be prepared for anything that comes, so that no matter what comes, you know that you are capable of handling those situations, whether that's protecting your family or whether that's just being healthy to enjoy life. We want you ready. I've said it many times, our government is actively working against us to make sure that we're fat, we're medicated, we're dependent, we're unhealthy, and we're unarmed. But there are many organizations that are working to fix that. And today, for part 2, we've got Nick Thayer. He's the owner of the Tactical Games, and he hosts the TTG podcast as well. Nick, welcome to part 2 of our time together. Let's talk a little bit. I want to talk about training in a minute, but let's talk a little bit about the different divisions. And I wanted to start with the women's divisions in particular, because I was looking at some of the requirements for the women, and holy mackerel, it's not like a free lunch on the female side. It's as tough or tougher for the female athletes. Tell us a little bit about the women's side.
Yeah, so we had a great competitor who was a prior Marine. She's now 55 years old. Her name's Leslie. She talked specifically about this topic, and the best thing that I heard from her was we set an expectation and we believe that people can make it.
Wow.
Instead of lowering an expectation and then pushing people through. So for the women's division, we have women's intermediate. We have women's tactical, women's elite, and then women's masters 40 plus.
Yep.
So if you can imagine the women's 40 plus and the women's tactical, the weights are kind of the same.
Okay.
For me, the tactical division on both the men's and elite side are what I expect for anybody doing like an ACFT or a PFT. Like that is the standard that I believe that every able-bodied American should be at within respect to their age range.
All right. So wait, you got to tell us what those requirements are, because right now I'd say that's probably less than 2% of America can meet those standards. No kidding.
Yeah. It's funny. So like 23% of Americans can actually meet PFT standards. Right. And I think we have like 53% of Americans are gun owners and 23% can meet PFT standards. So it's great that we're arming Americans. It's terrible that we don't care about physical fitness at all.
Yes.
So the ability to get your body up over a 6-foot wall, that's something that I think that every able-bodied American should be able to do. To be able to carry a human, and it doesn't need to be over your shoulder, but to be able to drag a human out of harm's way should you need to, right? So we'll say the average American's 185 pounds, average adult male. When it comes to moving your body, being able to run a mile, like just that, as simple as that sounds, being able to actually just run a mile. And you don't need to do it without stopping, but you need to be able to do it.
Yes.
We do push people past those standards.
Yes.
But our expectation is that that's the minimum that people should be able to reach. Being able to lock out overhead, it sounds simple. And of course, if you've had a shoulder surgery, if you've got some kind of impingement or restrictions, there's a reason for that. But being able to actually lock your arms out overhead, engage your back and your posterior chain and move with something like that. It's an awareness of your body. It requires training. It requires you getting into a gym and making sure that you can do those things, or you come out and you figure out that you can't when you're out there.
Yeah. And I love this too, because you're talking about, like, I was thinking in the women's tactical division, I think you were talking about them having to have a full kit, which is, let's say 20 pounds or more.
Yep.
They have to run a sub 11-minute mile. And then, or a sub 9-minute mile. I mean, like, there's different degrees depending on how much weight you have on you. Right. I think about that. That's pretty aggressive, right? Especially when you're weighted down. They underestimate the value of what they're carrying. And so that's one of the things I love about this so much is it's adding stress, it's adding duress, and you have to perform at a higher level because of it.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. It's, people will show up with a rifle configuration set up for CQB or for home defense. And, we're playing a game and the game isn't home defense, right? So they'll have lights on their rifles. They'll have, they'll have lasers. They'll have all kinds of stuff that they don't need for the game that we're playing. So it's making calculated decisions based on those kind of things. And that to me shows that people are actually becoming aware of what that thing is, what that rifle is, what that pistol is, what its functions are, why you have a light on it, why do you do the specific things that you do with your rifles. That to me means we're creating more intelligent gun owners, and not just gun owners, because it's great that there's 53% of Americans are gun owners, but if they don't know how to use that rifle, they're a liability and not actually an asset.
That's right. Tell us a little bit about what competitors will experience at the regional competitions. What are those like?
Yeah, so they're all different. I will say that we have a pretty good format that we stick to, but for the most part, every one of them is going to be unique in some way. We travel all over the country. We put these events on all over the country. Every range configuration is a little bit different, so we match the test to the area that we're at. Cool. For example, Utah, you're going to go to Utah. There's going to be about 300 competitors. So we'll have them broken up into 2 different groups of 150.
Right.
It's going to be 140, but 150 is just easier math. On Saturday, you'll do 4 different stages. And on Sunday, you'll do 4 different stages. Those stages will be, one of them will be a long movement, a long foot movement. We'll have a carbine course, meaning a long range rifle engagement. You'll have probably 5 typical tactical game stages, which will be anywhere in the 10-minute to 18-minute, maybe even up to 30-minute time domain. So you'll have 30 minutes of work or 10 minutes of work, and that will include a fitness element, multiple rounds of a fitness element, and shooting, or multiple fitness elements and shooting. Safety is paramount in our sport. We want people to have a good time. We want to stay on schedule. We want to make sure that we have a well-run event, but we also, first and foremost, want to make sure that everybody out there is being safe.
Yeah, that's great.
And so, we operate to ensure that safety is happening, and it's happening well and self-regulated. We have members of the community. Like, after you go and compete, you're going to stick around and you're going to judge, and you're going to be a safety observer for the guy that's shooting behind you.
Amazing.
And we make sure that, we keep our firearms pointed in the right direction, and that we all go there come out of there with the same amount of holes that we went in with, right? Like, we don't want any sunken chest wounds to have
That's
to deal
pretty
with.
important, I would imagine, to keep the games going, Nick, tell us a little bit about the training. I think this is one of the components that I'm most excited about as I prepare for the competition. You've got TTG University, you've got athlete camp, you've got training day, you've got some stuff online. Let's talk about some of the offerings that you have to get people prepared. Talk a little bit about the university first.
Yeah, Tactical Games University, they're 2-day events that we put on around the country, usually at host sites. So, for example, out at Utah, before about 6 weeks before the competition, we'll put on a Tactical Games University. And it's really just to get people out there that's very firearm specific, to get them used to how to utilize their firearms, how to shoot through a barricade, how to shoot from different positions. Teach people how to use their optic on their rifle. Like, maybe they have a red dot, maybe they've got a low power variable optic, giving them information to help get them in a better place once they get out there.
That's awesome.
I think our strongest training offering is in the athlete camps. The athlete camps are 3-day events, and we bring people in, and they can be completely novice, brand new to shooting. And we're going to take them from the crawl phase to the walk phase, and then to the run phase.
Wow.
It gives
in
them
3 days.
In 3 days. Yeah. A lot of it is, if you've ever been to a firearms course before, when it comes to firearms instructors, a lot of them come from incredible military units, right? We get guys that have been in Delta, that have been in group, that have been they've done a bunch of really cool things throughout their career, and they're great at teaching when it comes to instructing other military members. They're not great when it comes to instructing civilians. Delivery needs to be catered to the audience that you're teaching. And I think that's one of the things that our cadre of instructors does incredibly well, is they deliver instruction in a way that is digestible by the civilian population. They're not overly intimidating. They're not trying to push who they are. Instead, they're trying to provide information about how to do this thing better, how to do it safely. One of the things that I think is absent from almost every course that I've seen is a fundamental knowledge of what the firearm is actually doing. So not even being on the range, going into a classroom and explaining to people, this is how your pistol works mechanically. Here's how to mechanically understand how your pistol works. Same thing with a rifle. Taking a rifle apart and showing people the components inside of it, so they have an understanding of when I insert my magazine, I now know what's happening. When I rack the charging handle, I now know what's happening. It
That's
gives you
great.
a more holistic understanding of what's in your hands, and if something goes wrong,
Mm,
how you fix it, how to
that's
manipulate it,
great.
how to do those things. So
Mm,
athlete camp is incredible. We really this year we had, I think, maybe 38 or 40 students at our athlete camp here in
wow.
Austin, Texas, and they've always been great courses. Our online
That's
training
amazing.
platform is another one that's really incredible. So Jacob Hepner,
Mm,
he's a six-time CrossFit Games athlete. He heads up the physical portion of the training,
mm,
and Sal Hernandez, who is a San Antonio PD SWAT officer who's on their competitive SWAT team, meaning he travels all over the world and shoots competitively for
amazing.
his SWAT team in San Antonio. He was actually just in Dubai a couple months ago and
Wow.
competed in that. He's big in TTPOA and a bunch of other law
Mm,
enforcement organizations. He does all the dry fire work. And then
yeah.
Kalarina Woodard, who's she was a CrossFit Regionals athlete, incredible woman. She's a chiropractor. She handles all the
Mm,
stretching and the prehab portion of it. So making sure that
wow.
your body, not only are you training yourself, you're recovering properly.
Yeah.
And then we also offer dry fire as a portion of that as well. So
Mm,
it's something that you can do in your garage. It doesn't,
yeah.
it's cheaper than a box of ammo to go and learn
Yeah.
how to actually dry fire. So very important for our
Amazing.
sport and something that's incredibly useful.
Well, I'm really excited about the online stuff, right? Because there's different options. And one of the things you just talked about is, the way the trainers on the physical side take you through different components, especially from like that warm up, that recovery. The older I get, the more warm up I need. I mean, I used to be able to do anything on a dime. I never needed any warm up, but that just is not the way it is anymore. And to prevent injury, especially when you're lifting heavy things or going up and over things, you have to have the proper technique and the proper warm up to make sure you don't get hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's funny? Being older now, having an awareness of mechanics of my
Yeah.
body specifically through different movements, I never thought that I needed to warm up because I never understood how to activate certain motor pathways in my body. Right.
Hmm.
So I talked about posterior chain earlier, basically just meaning my butt and my hamstrings.
Yeah.
I didn't understand how to activate those early on when I was competing in
Mm.
other fitness things. So I would injure myself all the time because I didn't have
Yeah.
any awareness. Had I had a coach that was teaching me how to properly engage those muscles, how to activate them beforehand
Yes.
so that I was engaging them in a lift, I probably wouldn't have hurt myself. So, as much as we
Yeah.
think we don't need to warm up at a younger age, it's really
Yeah.
more about creating awareness of what's happening in your body when you're doing those specific
Mm.
movements.
That's really good. I was just thinking that you can prevent probably, more than half of the injuries just by knowing how to activate things and coordinate. Like just connecting your lower body to your upper body is
Yep,
such an important piece when you're doing these compound movements
yep,
that move weight from the ground to overhead.
correct. Core to extremity. It's something that is
Yeah.
it's a need in our sport and our lives and anytime you
Mm.
want to move something heavy, anytime you want to get your body somewhere, you're
Yeah.
activating from your midline stabilization and then sprinting. It's just
Yeah.
quarter extremity movements incredibly important.
Yeah. And, so the online options are really interesting, right? You've got the readiness and then you've got the TTG complete. When, for a competitor, and you also have the dry fire program, what would you recommend to somebody who's getting into the sport, wants to be, really well prepared for an event? What do you recommend?
Yeah, so the readiness program is designed for gyms. So if there's a group of people that you want to train with, that's what
Mm,
readiness is geared towards. The
gotcha.
complete program is geared towards an athlete who maybe they're in a gym or they've got their own home gym and they're looking to come out and compete in the sport as an individual.
Okay.
And then the dry fire program is included in the complete program, but we also have,
Mm,
if somebody's already at a gym, they've already got their own workout methodology, they want to do their own thing, it's just the dry fire portion.
okay.
So I would definitely recommend the complete for anybody that's
Mhm.
looking to come out and be a serious competitor.
Yeah.
If you're at a gym and you just want to get a group of people out and training for it, the readiness program is a great way to build some tactical game specific training into your gym's typical
That's
programming.
cool. That's cool. I think this is one of those competitive games that could be as big as these OCR races, these obstacle course races. Like it is that type of an environment. I think as more people get exposed to it, one of the things I love is that this training actually translates into real life, right? And that's why it's compelling to me because I actually think we live in a day and age where more people need to be super prepared physically. They need to be super prepared with their firearms to protect their families and their loved ones and their communities. Why would someone want to train like this? In what ways does it benefit them in real life?
Yeah, I mean, the ability to not ever have to say no, to say yes to any situation that comes up is the biggest thing for me.
Mm,
Like
mm,
spinning it from the protector, like of course that's an important entity and that's something that you always want to fall back on.
yeah.
But what I've always enjoyed about it is when somebody says, "Hey, do you want to go on a 50-mile ruck?" In my head, I'm thinking like I'm probably pretty close to that. Or if somebody says,
Yeah.
"Hey, you want to go hike Mount Rainier?" Or do you want to go do like
Right.
you want to go on a 10-mile ruck today? Do you want to go just do something? Instead
Mm.
of, well, and doubting myself and doubting my physical abilities,
Ah,
I know right away I can just, okay, yeah, shit, let's go do it. If it's,
yes.
we signed up for Mammoth Sniper Challenge is a 3 day, you pack everything that you have and that you have with you for the entire weekend on
Mm.
your back. So I had about a 65
Wow.
pound ruck. You ruck about 10 miles every day and you shoot different courses of fire around a military base in Georgia.
Mm.
You ruck everywhere you go. You bring with what you're sleeping with you, anything that you have, all your food. It's all
Wow.
with you. And
Mm.
at the drop of a hat, I was just able to do that. We signed up like 5 or 6 days before the competition because the slot opened up. So having that physical ability to
Mm.
just do what you want to do when the opportunity presents itself, whether it's for
Yes.
good or whether it's out of necessity.
Right. I love that. You're talking about freedom. You're talking about capability.
Yeah,
You're talking about the knowledge that you can respond under any circumstances. And I can't imagine a time in my lifetime where that's been more important than right now. I mean, we've got more risk in our communities. We've got more unknowns, more uncertainty. What is the harm in being fully prepared? And I think that's, as a man, I certainly as a protector, as a provider, as someone who takes that role seriously, I want to be capable. My middle son has gotten into Brazilian jiu-jitsu,
it's awesome.
and he tells me, oh my gosh, I mean, he's like, Dad, you got to do this. You got to do this. He's been after me for months now. He's now, I believe, a blue belt. And he said from the time he started to now, his level of capability and consequently confidence, you talked about it.
Yep,
His confidence is through the roof.
yep.
He knows that there's not that many situations from a physicality perspective that he can't handle. And I think that's important today.
Yeah, I think it brings out a lot of character.
Yeah.
There for me, another big aspect of it is like if you think about the incredible national parks that we have in this
Yeah.
country, right?
Mm.
And the incredible things that you can see in America if you are able-bodied and capable enough to get there.
Right.
How many of these walks that I've been on that it's like a 10-mile hike to get to this beautiful vista, but you have to be able to
Mm.
hike 10 miles to get there.
Right.
That kind of awareness and preparation, it's the same thing. It's like being able to see more of this beautiful land.
Yes.
Right? Like Teddy Roosevelt created the national park system,
Mm.
right? There was a reason that he did that.
Mm.
It's so incredibly important, and it's an important thing to show your children. I
Yeah.
think more important than anything is not only having the ability and the interest in physical fitness in you, but instilling that in your children. And I'm so glad
Yes.
to hear that your boy is doing jujitsu because
Yes.
combatives are a great way to destroy an ego,
Yes.
just like we talked about.
Oh,
Like
oh.
you will get your face wiped on a mat, and you just have to be
Exactly.
okay with it, and like
Yeah.
and you learn how to protect yourself in that situation. I think
Right.
it's awesome.
Right. And it's counterintuitive, right? You think about the Gracie school, Henry Gracie and all those guys. They've broken it down into these 32 fundamentals. And those 32 principles, he has a book about it now. They translate directly to life.
Yep.
And so I'm proud of him, the way he's doing it. All my kids, to one extent or another, have been competitive athletically and are still competitive. My daughter, super impressive, this past year decided to do a program called 75 Hard.
Oh yeah.
A guy named Andy Frisella, who's just a great American patriot, great businessman. But she did that. And why? Well, she did it because she wanted to test herself. It's
Yeah.
very similar to what you're offering with TTG. It's like, okay, test yourself, see how you're doing.
Yep.
Do you have the mental toughness for you
Yep.
for this? Do you have the physical capacity to overcome? And
Yep.
she completed the 75 Hard program, and she'll say it changed her life. It changed her entire mindset.
That's awesome. I mean, it's for so many of us, like it was the same for me going through something hard and
Yeah.
achieving it. Right. So like
Yes.
so often we start down these paths of the 30-day cleanse and day 10, we're like, well, that's hard. I'm going to give up on that.
Yeah.
I didn't have that early in life. I didn't have that growing up. It took the military to kind of bring that out in me, and it was doing something
Yes.
hard that I actually achieved. And at the end of it, I
Yes.
felt a sense of, okay, I am capable of more than I believed I ever was before. Now let's see how
Yes.
far we can push this. Let's see what else we're capable of.
I love it. Well, I love what you're doing with the tactical games. Super excited to be part of this group. I'm excited for September for Utah. Tell us how we can get in touch with you. Give us some ways that we can engage with you on social media as well.
Yeah, definitely check out at the Tactical Games on Instagram and at Facebook. You will have to type out the entire name and then probably do some searching after that because of the shadow banning that we've talked about.
Crazy.
YouTube's a great resource as well. Our website, www.thetacticalgames.com. We are the Tactical Games on YouTube as well. All of those are excellent resources for information, for viewing pleasure. I mean, if you just want to watch the sport, we put up heats from the sport up on YouTube so you can go and kind of get a feel for what it is that we're actually doing and have an understanding for what it is.
It's amazing. I'm really looking forward to the day that you get the contract with ESPN and we get to watch these things live. I mean, what are we talking about? How long are we from that? Let's go.
We are working on ways to make it more viewer friendly. The good news is we have an incredible announcer right now that does a good portion of it. But yeah, it's, I just need that. I need that big sponsor to come in and give those dollars so that we can afford to, because broadcasting is incredibly expensive.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I think we need to connect you. I'm sure you already are, to Joe DeSena and the Spartan race folks. They're amazing. You guys are a match made in heaven, I think, in many, many ways. Knowing that community, I think it'd be a perfect fit. It'll be interesting to see how you grow over time, because this is truly a great idea, a great community. Super thankful for you, Nick. Excited about our friendship, and thanks for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, Jimmy, thank you very much for having us, and we'll see you in Utah. Hopefully, you're ready.
Yeah, you. I heard that. I'm gonna do my best. Believe me, I'm not showing up out of shape. I'll tell you that.